Hi, I'm Bitten Once, and this is how I made the pauldrons for my husband's Halloween costume. I started with an 8-inch diameter globe that I bought at Walmart. It's just made out of your basic styrofoam. You can see here one half that's not hollowed out, and the other half that's all done and shaped. Basically, what I started doing is cutting lines parallel to the outside edge, about ½ inch inside, and then basically cutting a V shape towards that same line to help me pull out each piece. Underneath where my hands are here, you can see the form from the Druid of the Flame pauldrons, or the Druid Tier 11 from World of Warcraft. This was my goal. I've already created those spider legs on the edge there. You'll see them a little bit later. And I plan to create epoxy forms for those diamonds. Basically, I just kept cutting and cutting until I had this all pretty much hollowed out. It took about 15 minutes from start to finish to hollow it out, get it shaped, and do some fine tuning. Here I've gotten it all hollow, and now I'm going to shape it to the general form that I need. Taking the wedge from the first pauldron, I marked out where I needed to cut, and then used the big kitchen knife that I'd used to cut the foam in half in the first place. With the first pauldron, I could just guess at how it should look and cut it myself. Since I want them to look the same, I went ahead and used that wedge from the first one. Because it came out in one piece, I didn't have to trim off anything else, and laid it on top of the hemisphere for the second one. Here you can see I didn't quite get it right the first time, so I used the wedge again to mark, and now I'm cutting a little bit more. It's always better to cut small amounts because you can always cut off more if you need to. Don't push too hard on your styrofoam, otherwise you might break it at this point. Once I had that nice and cut, I realized that the edge was a little too thick, so I went ahead and used my box knife to trim off a little bit more. This is just a $1.50 box knife that Walmart sells in a 2-pack, with one this size and one thinner for more detailed work. The inside part isn't quite thin enough for me, so I'm going to go ahead and trim off a little bit more. I'm going to add some expanding foam insulation to the inside so that it's a little more comfortable for my husband to wear. As you get closer to the bottom, make sure you keep track of how thin you're cutting the styrofoam. Otherwise, you may end up with a hole, like I just did. Since we're covering the outside part with Wonderflex, I just went ahead and covered this part up with a star, basically, of your plain old masking tape. I also have decided that I'm going to coat the insides of the pauldrons with the same masking tape so that the styrofoam isn't flaking off all over the rest of the costume. The X probably would have been enough, but I wanted just a little bit more reinforcement to it. Once I had that done, it was time to coat it with Wonderflex. Wonderflex is a thermodynamic plastic that you can buy online at cosplaysupplies.com. The sheet that I have was about $26, and I didn't use all of it for these pauldrons. I still have about 1/3 of it left. Basically, with Wonderflex, and there are other tutorials out there that are more in-depth, but you just stick it on to whatever surface you're going to use and heat it up. You can heat it up beforehand, but unless you have something to hold the Wonderflex, it can get pretty painful for your hands. You don't need any special equipment. This is just a plain old hair dryer that I have on the high setting. And I've got it as close as I can get to the Wonderflex without actually touching it. Once it becomes flexible, then you can go through and stick it down to whatever you need. You have about 2 or 3 minutes where it stays sticky, and you can add more. Here is the finished product with the foam around the inside, and I added some around the edges for the ledge basically that's on the pauldrons. Here you can see the spider leg I made out of the same foam and plastic coated clothesline. This foam is just the expanding foam insulation you can get at Walmart for $3 a can. And this is what it looks like pre-finishing touches. Hopefully this helps with any projects that you might have. And here is a list of the materials and where I got them all. Thanks!